Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Canada Startup. And today we are talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, investing, FOMO, and we're trading in volatile markets. Hello, Bill. How are you today?
Doing well, thanks, Dave.
Fantastic. And Justin, I have a feeling you've had some good volatility with the markets today.
Good is one way of putting it, but I'm doing all right. Thank you.
Well, as we know, this is for financial education. We're not financial advisors. This is a little a session today where we're going to talk about the markets and talk about some things that were raised in conversations I had today in Clubhouse. I had a conference call with some folks in the States, and I'm really happy to be here to talk a little bit about the financial markets and all things crypto, digital, and SPACs and the volatility and the mindset. So we're going to start off with a question that was posed. And this is for you, Justin, to kick it off is, what's the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a loaded question, I would say. I'd say to the average person, they're both sort of just two different kinds of cryptocurrencies, right? And in a lot of ways, that's true, right? Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency, and Ethereum is the second largest cryptocurrency by market cap. However, when you sort of start to dig into their purposes and what they're used for, I think that's where you sort of start to see a lot of differences. But that's what we want to see, right? We don't want every cryptocurrency to be the same. We want them all to leverage blockchain technology in some sort of different and exciting way. I would say that if you were to compare Bitcoin to gold, that would make Ethereum the internet, right? So Ethereum is a different kind of blockchain. One of the things that makes them very unique is that they introduced this technology called smart contracts, and that essentially lets you do transactions in a decentralized way, right? So me and you can sort of agree on a trade of assets, and then we can let a smart contract be that intermediary, such so that, I can't rip you off and you can't rip me off. It's all in the code. So a lot of people leverage this technology and make these things called decentralized applications on them. So a lot of people say, wow, this Ethereum blockchain is a great way to sort of create these networks and leverage the smart contracts to do a lot of very exciting things. So you'll see that a lot of different apps and projects that you might find in blockchain are built on the Ethereum network. And that's not something we really see for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is more traditionally sort of this asset class. It's sort of on its own, just like gold. And it looks like that's what people are using it as right now. Does that start to answer your question?
It's the first time I've heard that if Bitcoin could be associated to be a store of value like gold, then Ethereum is like the internet. That's the first time. I would have thought the answer would have been then Ethereum is silver. And so the way you've just explained it is a nice nuance, because we are hearing about decentralized finance and that idea that if Bill and I want to do a contract or a deal, we can use Ethereum and the blockchain to write out the terms and conditions and have a settlement process that alleviates some of the risk. That's what I've heard for the first time. So thank you. Mm-hmm. Was that accurate?
Yeah. I think that's definitely the starting point to sort of start to dig into the sort of differences.
Now, we have seen the volatility in both Bitcoin and in Ethereum over the last 72 hours. In fact, I did write down some numbers here that Bitcoin hit a high in Canadian dollars of 72,886, Bill. And wow. In the last 24 hours, the low was 57,093. And right now it's at 61,300. Ethereum had a high of 2,558 Canadian, a low of 1814, and is closed at 1973 for a loss of approximately 30% from the highs. So, Bill, that's volatility. What question do you have about Bitcoin or Ethereum as a way for us to move the conversation forward?
I'd like to know a bit more that whole bit about Ethereum and doing the contracts and like where do you see that going? Like, will it become a regular thing for the future, or what do you think on that?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great question, and my bad answer for you is I don't know, but let's talk about a sort of a couple things, what's happening right now and what might happen in the future. Now, Dave, you sort of mentioned the idea of decentralized finance, right? That was sort of the craze of last year, and that was sort of, I think, the first leap in people leveraging this Ethereum blockchain to do some exciting stuff, right? So using those smart contracts, I think one of the first things people found out that they could do is great. Now we can lend cryptocurrencies to each other using collateral, right? Now with these smart contracts, there's a trustless way of being able to do these things, and market makers can earn interest on loaning out, and people can do more things by having access to capital. Now that's sort of spread out, and now you can almost see every single sort of banking or financial service that you can expect to see from traditional from the traditional markets. Now it can all be done on some sort of decentralized application built on Ethereum. I'd say in the future, we're going to see more applications, hopefully covering more industries, more sort of typical services that you might encounter done similarly, especially anything to do with financial transactions. I think it's not unrealistic to say that we might all be doing it on some sort of blockchain integrated platform within the next 10 to 15 years. I'd say one other big thing that's sort of happening in Ethereum right now is, if you guys have heard of Ethereum 2.0. So, and what that means is that Ethereum is being moved onto a proof of stake model rather than a proof of work model that it was before. I'm not going to totally jump into that, partly because I'm not too technically adept myself, but essentially that's going to let us do a lot more transactions on Ethereum much quicker. That being said, I also say the last thing I sort of mentioned is that there are a lot of other sort of similar things to Ethereum also popping up in the market. So I also can't guarantee that Ethereum is the best or will be the prevailing sort of provider of these services. We're seeing a lot of other base layer protocols is sort of the word to describe a blockchain that allows a lot of decentralized applications to be built on it. So that's called a base layer protocol. We're seeing a lot of them pop up. Some big ones, Polkadot, for example, I think is one of the larger ones. And all of them will claim to have some sort of advantage. Maybe it's network transaction speed. Maybe it's just lower fees. That's been definitely a huge problem for Ethereum. But yeah, I'd say where I'd see it probably going in the future is probably taking advantage, especially I guess in the shorter term, this decentralized finance thing, I do personally believe will get a lot larger, especially as I feel like interest rates are probably going to be forced down for the next couple of years. People are going to want to find alternative ways of banking, saving, getting high yield on their locked assets. Those are all things that are being done right now on Ethereum based applications.
Thank you so much. Again, you're using, I think, words that Bill and I are maybe, it's very new to us. Would that be right, Bill?
Oh, definitely.
And so
I can sort of see I can picture what's being said, but it definitely, it's like, okay, I got to get a whole new Worcesters.
And this is the thing, folks, is that anyone who's watching today, if you got questions, feel free to ask questions, because we're going to be having regular dialogue about this. This is something that it is affecting us boomers, and it's going to be something that our young ones, millennials, are going to be very involved with, as there are changes to the finance industry. Today, there were announcements. I believe Square announced that they're going to buy another $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. That it was active with PayPal. There was financial volatility. The people who are controlling the Fed are talking about this readily. They're talking it down today. This morning, we had the CEO of MSTR saying why he's just borrowed to buy another $1 billion of Bitcoin. It was a beautiful interview on CNBC. In fact, I am going to see if I can share a little bit of it because if we can get it, I'd like us to see it and hear just a few minutes and then get.
It's an asset class. And so, you know, if I put $1 billion into a bank and then came back a year later and I put another $10 billion in the bank is not overvalued by a factor of 10. The bank is just 10 times bigger. People are using Bitcoin to store their monetary energy for the long term. And so the price is a reflection of the monetary energy in this bank in cyberspace.
Hey, Michael, I just wanted to go back to a question about your holdings of Bitcoin personally and potentially the holdings of members of the board or executives in the management team. And the reason I raise this is I think there's a lot of companies now that are thinking about buying into Bitcoin, and yet there are employees and or board members who are either own Bitcoin already or buying in knowing perhaps that their company is going to buy Bitcoin. How you think about that from a legal perspective, because historically, if one company was going to effectively buy another company, it would actually be considered either illegal insider trading or just a breach of the fiduciary duty, because effectively you'd be taking advantage of corporate information.
Okay, well, the first thing to note is that Bitcoin is property. It's not a security. And that's a very critical idea. Property means you can own a house or you can own land, and your company can also buy land. With regard to public companies, the key is to make sure that you have adequate disclosure of all your holdings that might be viewed as a conflict of interest. And so you can be sure that I went to great lengths to adequately disclose to every member of the board the exact extent of my Bitcoin holdings before we even started to deliberate this. You see, Bitcoin is the most widely held investment asset in the world right now. We have congressmen, we have senators, we have members of government, we have CEOs, we have 100 million individuals out there that have it. You're going to find that lots and lots of people have this property. I think that whenever you're running an institution, be it a charity, an endowment, a government institution, a corporation, the key is to make sure that you're very transparent in your holdings before you enter into deliberation that might impact that company.
It was a wonderful conversation.
Stocks that are $1 trillion. I'm trying to figure out
And
what type of
I really enjoyed the conversation and the preparation that Michael has gone through, because he had to explain this to every board member. He gave assignments to every board member. They're very clear that this is a property and that it's going to go from a $1 trillion market to a $10 trillion market, likely in the next 10 years. Wow. And so that's the type of growth that we're talking about. Today, his stock got pounded about 20% down. The Bitcoin was down 11%. Many of the miners were down 30, 40% today. So it was a very cleansing day today in the Bitcoin world. And if you're shaken out and you're not into it, then you've got to go and do a little more homework to understand that this is not going to go away. It's likely it could go down another 10%, another 20%, because the Fed could definitely create some more hiccups. And it is a fascinating market. I was talking to somebody in Indonesia who has made a couple of $1 million with Bitcoin over the last decade. And he says they pay 18% on Bitcoin deposits. And I think Justin's been looking at some of the different deposits rates that people will pay for your Bitcoin. Yet I wanted to move to a way that is again, Canada's making some nice steps. They're leading the way in ETFs with Bitcoin. Care to share a little bit about what's been new in that field there, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and let's sort of talk about the markets in general. Yeah. I guess the last thing you sort of mentioned, the ETFs. I think, yeah, that's something that rolled out over the last week. The first Bitcoin ETF, I guess, as we can officially say it, right? Like, I guess you've had other, like, you know, for some listeners that might be a bit confusing, because, you know, you've had things like the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, you've had the miners, you've had companies with exposure to Bitcoin, but this is the first real instance of an ETF. It was launched in Canada, I believe, on the TSX, maybe it was on the TSV. I'm not entirely sure, but again, I think that's another great way retail investors to sort of put a bit of their money away into Bitcoin. And I think that's definitely great in the long term sort of vision, right? Of a lot of people who are bullish on Bitcoin saying that, you know, people will have about 1 to 5% of their investments or their net worth in Bitcoin. And I think that, you know, making it more accessible is definitely, you know, we're definitely trending in the right direction. I'd love to definitely talk about some of the other things that you mentioned. Square, yeah, today announced, I think it was 170 million, not a billion. But they definitely are growing their share. I think, you know, they bought 50 million a couple months ago, another 170 now. So that's definitely great.
What's great about it? What's great about it from your perspective?
I think, well, for me, it's well, first of all, Square, you know, as a payments company, they've actually processed, and a lot of these, you know, for example, like PayPal, and other payments processing companies that are now doing transactions in Bitcoin. I've been reading all over the place that, you know, it's something that is currently working out very well for them, right? And that's what you want. You want these early institutional adopters to see success, right? Because that's what's going to entice, you know, other larger players. Like I do think Square did have a large part in getting MicroStrategy to do what they're doing with Bitcoin, and that obviously got in part, you know, probably pricked Elon Musk's ears up a bit, and that got Tesla. And hopefully, you know, we start to see that sort of effect. I think every time a large corporation buys into Bitcoin to replace some of their balance sheet, I just think it's a great sort of case as to what Bitcoin was intended for, or what a lot of people thought Bitcoin was intended for. I'd also say one more big thing that sort of happened today was Tether, who's been sort of under investigation by the state of New York. They settled their case for, I believe, 17 million US dollars. I think it's a lot of questions. So Tether is a US dollar stablecoin. So it's a cryptocurrency, but it's pegged to the US dollar. And so I believe that there was a little bit of scrutiny from the I guess it was New York, you know, and if that had gone the wrong way, that could have been really bad, since, you know, a lot of people who hold Bitcoin also hold Tether, because it's a much easier way of sort of translating between the two. But that got settled, and I think that that's great. So you had a lot of great news, and I think, you know, the Bitcoin market cap just hit $1 billion. So I do think we're seeing a sell-off because, right? $1 trillion, absolutely. So yeah, I think we're definitely seeing a sell-off as a response to that. I think, you know, we've been having an astronomical bull run, right? And so I think that, you know, we're seeing definitely cutbacks across the board. So I do think now, or, you know, over the next couple of days, seeing how the market pans out could be a great opportunity to definitely throw some money into Bitcoin or some projects that you really believe in.
Well, let's talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. Bill, what's your relationship with FOMO when you've been watching these markets? Do you have any feeling that you might be missing out? You got to do now, or is that something that's not really affecting you?
That's not a huge thing. Like the FOMO thing, if I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't. I'm not too worried about that. I'd rather go in with a little more education that I'm getting right now and be able to make a better decision than just say, oh, I got to get in. No. I'm okay to wait.
Excellent. And that's what's really great. I think what you've done is you made your first investments in two good dividend yielders, with FIE over 7%, paid monthly, with Enbridge about 7.55%, paid quarterly. Actually, Enbridge has been pretty strong, their stock, in the last week also. So you might get both a capital appreciation and a dividend boost that could bring your return over 9, 10, 11% this year, which could be sweet.
That would be all right.
Justin, what are you doing with FOMO? Because I have a feeling with you trading between options and futures and Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then even some of the smaller cryptos, is FOMO to you, and in what ways are you dealing with it?
Yeah, look, I think with a new space, I've definitely been caught by the FOMO bug a couple times. Sometimes to my favor, sometimes not. But yeah, I'd say generally just I feel like I've been able to use the FOMO to sort of catalyze going into new things and trying to learn the different things that I didn't know about. One huge thing that I'm surprised we haven't actually mentioned yet is NFTs. If you guys have heard of that, non-fungible tokens. It's actually, yeah, I think it's probably the latest big craze in the blockchain space. People are selling works of art or art like things online, and every time you buy or sell a piece of art, it comes with its own private key to identify that you own it. And some of these NFTs are going for $1 million. And right now it's kind of weird. It'll be like a pixelated picture of a head, and I'll sell for a couple $100,000. But it's this, there's this new thing with NFTs that I've been looking into. I almost bought one. I almost bought a Homer Simpson for $800, and then I realized I probably shouldn't do that. But hey, I might wake up tomorrow and it might be worth like $30,000. So
today, this morning, the baseball player Alex Rodriguez launched the SPAC, and his the partner he was launching it with sold his baseball card collection for over $100,000. His rookie card supposedly is over $1 million. So I have a feeling that's a little bit of your NFTs, is that they're going to start using collectibles as a way to do that. Bill, this is again the wacky world of bringing technology with fintech, with FOMO and collectibles and alternative storage of wealth that is coming into play, because there is a ring around that. America can't just continue to print money. The fact that they printed 15% of the cash of all time this past year, this is out of control. Who is actually running the show there right now? And what we've seen over the last 4 years, things can be flipped over pretty quickly. And so people are setting up alternatives as opposed to having all their eggs in one basket.
Yeah. This little thing about is NFT. So Norman Frank Tom NFT, is that?
NFTs, non-fungible tokens.
Okay, and this whole thing, the trading cards and whatnot like that. Now that's piquing my interest. That's for sure.
No, I think that was a great comparison. I think it's because you get your private key, you can properly identify. There's a very small supply, which makes people very excited, right? Like especially now, let's say you get one of the first NFTs that are ever created, and maybe they become irrelevant, but maybe they don't, right? Like in a couple of years, you get to be the person who owned one of the first ever largely adopted NFTs that could go for crazy amounts of money. Like we don't have to talk about how overly inflated the fine art market is. We hear of those things all the times. And I think that Dave made a great point comparing it to like the baseball cards. I think the one thing that I thought of were Pokemon cards and the exorbitant money for Pokemon cards. And one of the people who brought that into the mainstream was Logan Paul, and he made his own NFT, and he's made about $3 million selling his own NFT, right? Another person who's really bullish on it is Gary Vaynerchuk. VaynerMedia, that guy. He's been tweeting about it a lot recently, but I think he really likes it as well. So definitely great to go into it with that lens to see if you can find things that just like with sports card might be a steal now that could resell in a couple of years for a lot of money.
And I think you're absolutely right when you say go in it with a new lens, go in it with new eyes. Go in again, for you, just you're 20 years old. For you to do a trade like that, if you hit a grand slam, you hit a grand slam. If you strike out, it's not gonna take food off your table, hopefully. And that's part of the diversified portfolio that we're talking about. That's part of, for your generation, that what you're going to be doing for finance, it isn't likely going to the bank to cash your check and use your money to buy all of your things you do, because your generation doesn't even carry cash anymore. And Bill, how absurd is that when you go talk to your mom about not using cash anymore? So
Yeah.
there is a transformation occurring. I welcome your ideas and insights, because you're definitely teaching us here, and we really appreciate it. I would like to just go from a financial perspective, highlights, lowlights for the week. I think a celebration of Bill of making the first couple of trades. Anything else that you might want to share about the highlights, lowlights for the week in the finance space? Bill?
Oh, my big highlight obviously was my first purchase through Wealthsimple. Just realizing it's extremely easy once you get going. So that was pretty cool. And then I didn't read a lot of the articles, but that Bitcoin stuff was pretty interesting to see how it was bouncing up and down, more than a yo-yo type of thing. So that was pretty cool.
Very cool. And Justin?
Well, it's more like a broken yo-yo right now because we're waiting for it to come back up. But
Walk the dog, he's doing his tricks.
Exactly.
Yeah, not too many highlights for me yet. But it's great. It's part of the learning experience. Hopefully, taking the opportunities that the market's letting us right now. I mean, like I was actually thinking about it, and I was like, I was going through my my stock portfolio as well, because I don't check that one nearly as frequently. But this sort of Bitcoin or ETH drop, if people are talking about, oh yeah, I know, like this proves it's a scam, like it's gonna go to zero now. I was looking at some of my other stocks, like my speculative stocks, like my EVs and my like, for example, my marijuana stocks. Pretty similar drops, right? Like I think it's just something that, and the markets across the board have been,
let's unpack that a little bit, because when we talk using slang like EVs and marijuana stocks, and I want to use some of the names so that Bill also familiarizes with some of the cannabis stocks, some of the EV electrical vehicles. Which ones were you looking at? The SPACs, the special purpose acquisition. They were down. In fact, my portfolio is down about 17% now. So this sucker, when I first started, within the first week, it was up about 9%. 2 weeks later, it's now, the portfolio is down 17%.
Yeah. I can't remember I think it was like Churchill Capital, CCIV.
That is perhaps the biggest quote. The Suits versus Main Street attack is that they just agreed to buy Lucid after about a month of rumors where it went from 15 to 30 to 60. And they were hoping it was going to go to 90 after the announcement. Well, guess what? It went from 60 to 35. And so
buy the rumor, sell the news, right?
This is one of the best examples of that. But crushed the investors, because for the last 2 weeks, everything was, it's going to go from 60 to 80 to 90 to 100. And they went to 35 because they found out the pipe investors of the special purpose, this is the round of funders, were able to buy it at $15. And so it pretty much screwed anyone who bought the shares for over 15. So its big announcement last night, it shocked a lot of people when it went from 60 down to 35, settled around 40, and I believe it did finish up at 35. So special purpose acquisition corps are going to come under a whole new range of scrutiny. Most of mine are down. I was thinking what I should do. FOMO was really working me today, whether I should sell them all and put it all into one. And that way, like if everything's down 8 to 10 to 12% today, buy the one that's down the most and get some leverage from this downtrend. So I was going through that today, and I thought it was pretty cool. What else were you looking at today? Because we did have some. Plug Play was a big one that's been very popular in hydrogen. That stock went from like $2 up to 60. They were saying it's going to go from 50 to 100. It dropped again the last 3 days. I think it's dropped over 25 to 30%. What were you looking at?
So I mean, like I sort of mentioned, I've been dabbling in different electric vehicle plays. So I have QuantumScape and Workhorse.
when did you get Workhorse? Because it got announced that they didn't get their contract.
Yeah. So hey.
So, Bill, that was a deal where if it had been the rumor, if it got a U.S. postal contract, it was going to double or triple, and it didn't get it, so it dropped 40% today.
A question for you guys: when you're like the EV stuff, right? The electric vehicles. Do you focus when you're doing your research or looking for different ones, say to build a little bit of a portfolio, say on electric vehicles? Are you only looking electric vehicles, or do you look the vehicles plus, I'm going to call it accessories? Have you ever, like, do you do that part? So I guess where I'm going here is there's all kinds of electric vehicles being made now. It's not just on the road, because I was reading some stuff about boats starting to come out as electric vehicles. So what's the common thing amongst all these things? They got to run on a battery. So what about companies that run? So there's the batteries that have to power these things, and then what the batteries are made out of. So the majority of the batteries, I think, are lithium. So, like, do you guys drill down that far and look into other things like that, or what sort of things do you normally look at first?
Justin, you want to give your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point, and like again, like not all of these companies that we mentioned are physically making cars, right? For example, like Workhorse, I believe they do charging stations, correct? I look a lot personally at things like semiconductors because, like you said, with batteries, they need semiconductors. Semiconductors are in a huge shortage right now. So that's why, if your other EV stocks have been struggling recently, especially, larger companies like General Motors, who I think, those who are trying to expand to EVs, having a lot of problems with not being able to get their hands on semiconductors. So that's also something that I've been personally looking at. But yeah, I think that's definitely a great point, and that's if you can figure out who's supplying specific parts to all the different EV car companies, that's a great way of getting some implied diversification there, right?
So I'll pick it up too. It's a great answer and great question, Bill. It's when you're looking at the EVs right now, if you look at the 60,000 mile perspective, you can see, oh, there's Tesla. They're dominating right now. Oh, China, they've got this thing called NIO. And now you got Lucid that's going to come out with the luxury. But then you have all of the automakers doing EV right now. So it's not necessarily new, yet you see Tesla definitely getting the benefit of not only the EV, the electrical vehicle, but also they've got the solar, they've got the technology, they've got the system, they've got the driver car. And so it's getting a tech play that's incredible value. If you take the other spectrum, go look at the valuation for Ford right now, and you'll be shocked because Lucid just launched and they were going to be at the same value as Ford, but they got crushed. So, but then you take the second level, who are the suppliers? And that's a really good question. But the battery technology, the one I just mentioned, was plug play. You look at, okay, so what about the lithium? So who are the lithium providers? Then you look at something called MP Materials, because lithium is not a very actively mined product. And then you look at the lithium recyclers, and that's who also was on CNBC today. He used to be the second in control at Tesla, and now he's running a lithium battery recycling company. And so today was quite fascinating because you have Tesla in the news because their stock dropped a lot. Elon Musk has diversified into Bitcoin in the last little while. His number one engineer is now running his major competitor, his major American competitor, Lucid, and his number two is now running a lithium recycling company. So it is, and you'll start to see that. And that's the type of granular view you sometimes need to have to get good at investing. At the bottom line is that if you can drill down in some of these rabbit holes and you start to see things that don't make sense, and you start to see differences in market value, and you have the conviction because of your own research, that's when you can make an investment. And if you know that you're right, the market can go down and you know that this is a buying opportunity. And that's the type of conviction you would need to have if you're going to be a good trader. An investor has a little more luxury. They've got the luxury of time. Yet a trader really has to put that trade on, have a stop. And that's the part that my antidote to FOMO, folks, is have a thesis. is have an investment thesis, have a target, have a reason you're making the investment, spend that extra 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, do a chart or two, know your entry point, your exit point. And if you develop that discipline, I have a feeling it's a good combatant or antitoxin towards FOMO. And that's sort of, I did it a little bit backwards today because I did about 7 trades. But then after the fact, I came back and figured out my thesis. So I want to have a little bit more China exposure. So having a little bit of more NEO makes sense. I do want to have a 2% portfolio in EV this year. So I'm working towards a 2% portfolio with EV players. And so I came up with this matrix of Bitcoin or crypto. I want to have 2 to 5%, yet that means in the next 3 to 4 months, I want to start easing into some positions. And that's what I wanted to talk about today was you can buy Bitcoin, you can buy Ethereum. It is actually quite technical. I've been attempting for the last 10 days, Justin even helped me to set up a wallet. I still have not been successful.
So do you have to set up this wallet before you can make the Bitcoin purchase?
Yes, and there's levels of security there too, and there's level of risk there too. So if you want to dumb it down for where we're maybe at, buying an ETF like a Bitcoin fund might make more sense because then we don't have to worry about remembering our keys, our soft keys, our hard keys. And Justin, you want to speak a little bit about that just to give Bill a little bit of color because it is, I've watched it. It's not simple for people who aren't that tech friendly.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we'll probably have to continue to deal with. It's not like when you go set up your credit card, you can walk into a bank and someone will sort of walk you through the whole process. It's sort of like, it's the emphasis, or it's the same magnitude of setting up a bank account or a credit card, except you're doing it by yourself. So all of that sort of responsibility is now on you. But, I think for the longest time, cryptocurrency and, maybe even still by those who are, I won't say anything about them, but a lot of people might still say, oh yeah, it's just used by criminals and drug dealers. And if nothing else, this is a great way to ensure that whenever you buy cryptocurrency, it's still sort of, you're secured and your transactions are secured and you're not using it to smuggle anything.
So there is that component to it that we will have further conversations about the security to register your Bitcoin to have it secure. And then if we want to make it simple, you could go online tomorrow, Bill, and check out BTCC, Yahoo Finance, get the details for it, and maybe make your first Bitcoin investment. If you wanted to take another level down, you could potentially look at the miners, the ones that we've talked about in the past, the ones that talk about volatility, Riot and Mara. And the new one is SOS, and those are super volatility. Yet we have got a couple in Canada too, Hut 8 and BITF, that I think BITF had a 40% swing. Hut had a 44% swing yesterday. And so these miners have a lot of volatility. Are you looking at any miners, Justin, or any interest in making an investment in a miner?
I think we've had sort of this discussion before. I think for me, I am so exposed to cryptos in general that I think I'd like to keep my stock portfolios sort of pure, like away from that. Yeah, and that's just to make sure I'm not exposed to all that extra risk. Like we saw today, most of these stocks are tied to, if not, even greater beta to the price of Bitcoin. So I think, same sort of remontada. Like it's a great way to get exposure if you don't want to go through the hassle of making a wallet, starting an account. But that being said, some of the things we talked earlier, if you do want to start exploring things like NFTs or these Ethereum applications, or storing. Like if you want to use it for the technology, it's something you're gonna have to deal with at some point. But I think for your average retail investor who just wants some exposure, go ahead. I think the mines are a great idea. For me, the first mine who can be completely 100% using renewable energy and really sell that, I think will be great. I think they will be one that I might tap into, just because I know the largest concern, the biggest backlash that Elon got for his investment in Bitcoin is about the electricity usage and the environment. So that's something to keep an eye out for. If we can get one of those, I think that would be a great opportunity.
Cool. Let's go around the horn on some steps forwards. What are you looking at maybe to invest? Today was quite fascinating because the real boring stocks that were quite attractive were things like Apple, JP Morgan, Wynn Hotels, and the Carnival, the cruise lines. And so those were some that were creating some uptick in the marketplace, whereas you had all of this volatility in the Bitcoin space, the EV space, the high growth space, and you had some of the more stoic, boring ones creating some nice investment opportunities because they had been a little out of favor. And my little one for people to take a look at today would be Apple, or in Canada, take a look at the Royal Bank. The banks are looking very strong this week and might show some nice returns. How about Bill? Anything that you're interested in or good steps to move forward in your?
So my step, from today, would it be best to that new ETF that Canada introduced as far as for the cryptocurrency? Is that a good baby step to get exposure?
Justin?
Absolutely.
And then, do I do that just as a regular purchase, as though I'm buying another stock, or do I have to do the wallet thing you've been talking about?
No. So I'd say go on your Wealthsimple account, type in BTCC, and I haven't checked myself, but it should show up. Yeah.
Yes, it does. And I bought some the very first day, and so you could just buy it. It's about $9 right now. I think I bought the first ones at about 11, and so you'd be getting it at a pretty good level. So
BTCC.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I can actually just take a quick peek for you because that's what they're trying to do, is make it a lot easier for us. So it's right now at 904, and it's been a high and low of 940 to 860, and right now it's at $9. So if you wanted on your Wealthsimple, you could go and buy 10 shares, and you would have your first investment in Bitcoin.
Cool. That's going to be my step for this week.
All right. How about you, Justin? Were you looking at Virgin Galactic today? It was down pretty heavy.
No, I wasn't. I definitely should. I think for me, like, this week has been like a very interesting, like, holistic sort of macro adjustment. I think where I've done well, and probably where I've done not enough at all, is to make sure that I take those high risk asset profits and cycle it back into things that are a bit lower risk. So in my equities portfolio, that is sort of taking, like, I should have sold my gains from QuantumScape, and I guess earlier in the year Beyond Meat would have been a great place to take even more profit and cycle it into some of the stocks like the FIE or some of the other shares. For my crypto portfolio, that would have been taking my altcoin profits and cycling it back into probably just Bitcoin, to be honest. Like, even though Bitcoin's down, some other coins are down a lot more. But yeah, I just a lot of sort of retrospective pondering about acknowledging that we are in a bull market right now. It's almost a very synthetic bull market. So just to keep that in mind as we move forward, make sure that my risk portfolio stays the same size as a proportion of my general portfolio, and not to get too carried away. I think that's something that I'll continue to try to make sure I'm rebalancing and doing this week onwards.
And that's a key word, is rebalancing. And that's one of the things that people sometimes don't understand in the market, is that if you're rebalancing and you have a stock like Apple, for instance, and it was 10% of your portfolio, but last year it went up 80%, it gets to a point where it becomes 17% of your portfolio. So you actually have to sell it, even though you don't want to sell it. And then you recycle it into perhaps out of favor stocks. And the out of favor stocks perhaps are the ones that will take a year or 2 years. Yet when you have the cycle shift, that's going to maybe bolster your portfolio. So what we've seen over the last 2 months are the banks have been very out of favor for the last year and a half. This cycle right now, and you've seen the steepening of the yield curve, the banks look like they might have a good run until, I think, they get derailed by all of the defaults that might happen when we start to make people pay for some of their non-payables over the last year. And so I think we might have a fake out with the banks, is that they might really show great numbers, but maybe next quarter, the quarter after that, there might be some huge non-performing loans that may impact their numbers. So that's, I think, part of the volatility. These are some of the steps moving forward. Yet I do love your word, Justin, about rebalancing it and developing a discipline to do that. It is something that I welcome any future questions or ways to best do that. Yeah. With that, Bill, thank you so much for your time. Any last comment or question for tonight?
Today was great. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting that BTCC to get started in the crypto world. And then, I'm looking forward to next week.
And you looking forward to get your first dividend, which might be like next week also.
Yeah.
And anything else from you, Justin? Continued success in your portfolio and portfolios, and
I mean, hoping for a better week to come than the one we just had. Making sure everyone keeps on top of the news. Again, when my prophet Kathy Wood says the market might be a bit higher than it should be, we listen to her. So just hoping to keep a fresh mind and a level-headed attitude.
Watch out for those false prophets. Yet you can definitely learn from her, because what she does is a nice thing. She sends all of her transactions on a nightly basis, so you can actually see what she is buying and selling, which as someone who's starting to really connect with the markets, that's a really great discipline, and something that, Bill, you can take a look at. This is the main investor behind Tesla and ARK Investments, and in the last 2 months, I bought 2 of her funds. One is on the fintech, because I just don't necessarily want to follow all of them so close that she does. And the other is on the pharmaceutical or the genome tech, which another area that I don't expect to try to understand all of those.
What's the lady's name again? Kathy?
Justin?
Kathy Wood.
Kathy Wood?
ARK Investment.
A-R-C?
A-R-K.
A-R-K.
Maybe next week we'll have a talk about. Yeah, that'll be a great topic, actually. Let's talk about Kathy, because right now she's done some very bold things. About a year and a half ago, she was the one who said Tesla is going to go to 3,500 or 4,000, and that's when there were like 300 or 500 people said she was crazy. Well, today she is, like Justin said, she's considered to be quite prophetic in her investing. Yet those tend to be short-lived in my sort of 40 years experience of the market. So we'll see.
Yeah.
One event I'm going virtually to, I think on Thursday, is the Bloomberg Crypto Summit. So if signups are still open, I definitely recommend that. Huge, I think Kathy Wood will be speaking about something. You got the Michael Saylor, you got a bunch of different people from all aspects of cryptocurrencies and asset management. So maybe something to keep an eye out for if you want to learn more.
Yeah, when I post it on Facebook, maybe you just add the link. That would be great. And when I post it on YouTube, which again, any folks, if you'd like to subscribe, add a question, we'll have a next week's session, and we could bring in some of your ideas or questions. So yeah, if you have got a link for that, please throw that on there, Justin. That would be much appreciated. And you never know, we might see you at the Bloomberg Crypto virtual summit.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate your insights, your views. Reminder, this is not financial advice. It's for financial education. Have a brilliant and profitable week ahead. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
See you
guys.
next week.